bunker. One weekend last month I happened to notice a skirting in my back room had come away from the wall. Curious, I decided to investigate. However, when I tried to remove it, I heard an audible click in the wall and a slight drop in the floorboards beneath the carpet. Intrigued, I removed the carpet and discovered a loose square of flooring. With a little pressure, I managed to force it down where it hung on hinges, revealing an old metal ladder fixed to the wall. Equipped with a torch, I climbed down to explore further. I found a switch on the wall, which I decided to try. A globe hanging from the center of the room lit up, an old gramophone hidden under a drop sheet started playing Moonlight Serenade, and an old army radio crackled to life with urgent voices. Additionally, I heard the sound of a generator winding up, seemingly coming from an adjacent room. Amidst all these discoveries, I couldn't help but notice a large black combination safe in the corner. However, the focal point of the room was a substantial old lecture room chalkboard, perfect for my work on formulas. Over the past few days, I have been diligently cleaning the room, removing the cobwebs and dust. During the cleaning process, I noticed a draft coming from behind the chalkboard. After some effort, I managed to move it slightly, revealing a locked steel rivet door. Peering through the keyhole, I could see nothing but darkness on the other side. Furthermore, I discovered that the wallpaper on the east wall was deteriorating, exposing another door with a smaller, old-style keyhole. The most intriguing element of this room, however, remains the securely locked steel safe in the far corner. Despite my attempts to crack the combination, it remains stubbornly closed. I did stumble upon an old manila folder labeled TS in a metal filing cabinet. Its contents led me to believe that this room may have served as a military command post, hastily abandoned based on its condition when I discovered it. Inside the folder, I found a piece of paper with 5 numbers written on it. Perhaps these numbers hold the key to opening the safe, although I wonder if I should try them in reverse order. As I pondered over the numbers, I realized that they might be part of a code. I had taken photographs of the room when I first discovered it, and upon examining them on my laptop, I noticed a faintly erased formula on the chalkboard. With some enhancement, I recognized it as the Enigma cipher. Running the numbers through the cipher yielded a result that successfully unlocked the safe. Unfortunately, all that was inside was an old key. Although it didn't fit the large door, it did unlock the smaller one. Opening it cautiously, I was met with a musty smell and the sight of a conference table surrounded by 12 chairs. On the wall, there was a map titled Guilford Air Base Area 51, and a dusty piece of paper on the table caught my attention with the heading Roswell Similarities. Attached to it was an inventory of spare parts, with one item, a centrifugal orb, circled in red. In the corner of the room, I noticed a cobweb-covered briefcase handcuffed to a solid bar. It appeared to be a heavy-duty case, secured with a double 6-number combination. Cracking it would require countless attempts. Just as I was engrossed in this task, I heard a knock on my front door. Realizing the urgency, I quickly covered the hatch leading to the bunker and concealed it as best I could. Through the peephole, I saw 2 serious-looking, clean-shaven men wearing decorated Air Force uniforms and dark aviators. I decided to open the door and step outside, rather than allowing them to enter and potentially discover the hidden rooms. They explained that they were conducting an investigation regarding an electrical storm that occurred a few weeks ago. They inquired if I had noticed any unusual air traffic on that day. I informed them that I had that day off work and the only unusual occurrence I remembered was a lightning strike on that power pole which caused a spectacular explosion of sparks and a power outage in my house. The Western Power Company replaced the badly damaged transformer box a few hours later. Satisfied with my response, they left in a black BMW sedan with non-regulation tinted windows. Returning inside, I sat on the couch and contemplated their questions. I recalled that during the power outage, my light bulbs emitted a faint pulsing glow. Additionally, the lightning strike had caused some damage to the house, including blowing out a couple of skirtings. It was during this time that I first heard the hum of the generator under the house, which now refused to turn off along with the light. It became evident that this generator, or whatever it may be, must have an external power source. What had I unknowingly awakened? Suddenly, I heard the sound of a lawnmower start up next door. It was Dermot, my neighbor. I went outside to check the mail, and there he was, mowing the lawn as usual, wearing his old white lab coat. Dermot, an elderly man with a shock of white hair and a strong Irish accent, noticed me and turned off the mower. He approached the garden fence, visibly more nervous than usual. He asked about the men in uniform and seemed distracted, constantly looking over his shoulder. He mentioned that he was tidying up the yard because he was going on a long trip. I could sense that there was something more he wanted to tell me, but he held back. After bidding each other farewell, I returned inside, carrying a small parcel from the mailbox. Securing the house, I descended into the bunker. I had recently completed a thorough cleaning, and the room now resembled its original state from 60 years ago when it was last occupied. As I began opening the parcel on the conference table, a mechanism inside it started whirring. Although it could have been a cause for concern, I knew that my trusted friend and technical expert, Rocky, had come through for me once again. The parcel contained a pair of briefcase combination crackers, and one of them had accidentally turned on. I promptly switched it off, attached them to the briefcase, and set them in motion. With the vast number of combinations, it would undoubtedly take a considerable amount of time. Leaving them to their task, I heard a blood-curdling scream coming from next door. Without hesitation, I rushed to Dermot's house, where I found his lifeless body and his wife, Maisie, standing over him in shock. The house had been ransacked, and it was evident that a crime had taken place. I comforted Maisie and immediately called the police. She explained that she had just returned home and discovered the devastating scene. While we waited for the authorities to arrive, Maisie revealed that Dermot had entrusted her with a message to deliver to me in the event of his demise. She handed me a medical bracelet that she had removed from his wrist, pointing out that the phone number and postcode were incorrect but that he wanted me to have it. As we sat there, we could hear the approaching sound of an ambulance. The officers examined Dermot's body but found no signs of life, covering him with a white sheet. The police promptly took our statements. During this time, Maisie shared their life story with me. After immigrating from Ireland to America, Dermot had worked for NASA as an astrophysicist. Following the war, they were asked to come to Australia to conduct research similar to what Dermot had been involved in at New Mexico. Maisie mentioned an incident that occurred before Dermot's retirement, where his best friend and colleague had mysteriously disappeared. Since then, Dermot had become a changed man, keeping many secrets to himself due to the oath of secrecy he had taken. In their retirement, they would often drive past Perth Airport, frequently checking a particular mound of dirt near the control tower. Dermot had been elated in recent days because surveyors had marked the site for excavation. The coroner arrived and took Dermot's body away, while Maisie's daughter arrived to take her mother home. I immediately drove to the airport, standing near the control tower. From there, I could see an unidentified structure hidden beneath a mound of earth. It was the only undeveloped piece of land, recently marked by surveyors for excavation, just as Maisie had mentioned. Planning to return in the morning, I left for the day. However, when I arrived the next day, it was too late. Overnight, whatever had been concealed in the earth had either been removed by heavy machinery or had vanished on its own. Disheartened, I returned to the bunker and sat in the largest chair in the conference room, contemplating recent events while listening to Billie Holiday's rendition of As Time Goes By on the gramophone. Dermot's parting words echoed in my mind, "The future of your earth is in your hands. Ensure you have a solid foundation, and you will prosper." Dermot had a habit of speaking in riddles, so this enigmatic message did not surprise me. It seemed as though he knew about the bunker and intended to lead me to it. But why was this room so significant? I discovered that a robotic code cracker had already found one combination and automatically turned off. The other one had also finished its task. With caution, I opened the briefcase to find a large, old-fashioned door key and a diagram of a safe with a false inner wall panel. I immediately took the key to the steel door, which was partially blocked by a blackboard mounted on a false wall. Fortunately, I had previously moved it enough to access the keyhole. As I turned the key, I could hear the satisfying sound of the door unlocking. Now, it was time to tackle the safe. I carefully examined its contents and managed to remove a panel, revealing a handle. With a sense of anticipation, I pulled down on the handle, causing the false wall to slide away into the wall. Nervously, I pushed the door open, only to be greeted by the growing noise of the generator. The room was shrouded in darkness, except for a glowing sphere in the center. In order to illuminate the space, I located a switch on the wall and flicked it, instantly illuminating a bank of lights. However, my surprise turned to shock when I saw a skeleton dressed in a white lab coat sitting in front of me. After regaining my composure, I took a closer look at the skeleton, which had a name tag that simply read Andrew. He was seated near a laboratory workbench, where an open journal lay. The page I glanced at contained a heartfelt message, stating that Andrew was out of food and unable to restart the orb. He expressed his apologies and love for someone named Sally. My attention then turned to the glowing sphere, which seemed to be the orb Andrew referred to. It was prominently displayed in an elaborate spaceship return capsule, devoid of its outer panels, and was slowly spinning. A heavy cable connected the base of the capsule to a stainless steel pole that extended through the ceiling. The same cable had left a burn mark on the ground nearby. As I surveyed the room, I noticed 5 plaques on the wall, each commemorating test pilots who had lost their lives in the line of duty. My gaze returned to the orb, and I noticed a chair mounted inside. Suddenly, a ticker tape machine started up, spewing out a strip of paper with German writing. I quickly collected the ticker tape and placed it in a bag, along with Andrew's journal. I closed up the room and decided to seek the assistance of my old friend Olaf, a retired German army officer, to decode the message. Olaf informed me that the tape contained an automated response to an event in Germany. Apparently, there was an underground laboratory where an anticipated action had taken place. This event coincided with the day lightning struck my house, leading me to believe that a similar machine to the one in my bunker had been activated. The tape also contained coordinates, prompting Olaf to suggest a trip to Germany to pinpoint the location. I accepted his offer and brought the journal with me on the flight. According to the journal, Andrew was known as the man who dropped the ball. He had accidentally dropped the orb while working on it, causing it to stop functioning. Despite facing ridicule from his colleagues and supervisors, Andrew was determined to reactivate it. He realized that a strong electric shock or a lightning bolt during a thunderstorm could potentially revive the orb. Tragically, Andrew had died while waiting for this moment. His loyal friend and colleague, Dermot, had locked him in the bunker at Andrew's own request. Inside the journal cover, I discovered a black and white photograph of Andrew, a proud young scientist with a graduation hat tassel hanging near his smiling face. Half an hour before landing, I noticed 2 familiar faces on the flight, the military men who had visited my front door. I was taken aback by their presence and observed one of them raising his newspaper to conceal his face, while the other pretended to be asleep, allowing his hat to partially cover his face. Upon returning to my seat, I wrote a note to Olaf, informing him of the situation. He remained calm and responded with a note of his own. Upon our arrival at Braunschweig-Wolfsburg Flughafen, I noticed Olaf entering a taxi, while the 2 mysterious men got into a black saloon car and followed him. My driver, Paul, exuded professionalism and diplomacy, evident from his chauffeur uniform and hat. As we smoothly navigated through traffic, I complimented him on his driving skills. Paul then shared some stories about his experiences as a Formula One test driver, where he had to maneuver large vehicles with precision. This reassured me that I was in capable hands in case of any emergencies during our journey. Eventually, we arrived at the Hotel Deutsches house, where I would be staying for the night. To my surprise, Olaf joined me for breakfast the next morning, having successfully evaded the mysterious men. He had also conducted some local research based on the information from the ticker tape, leading us to the Braunschweig castle. As we approached the castle, I noticed a lion guarding the entrance, which triggered a memory of a similar sketch in Andrew's journal. Upon closer inspection, I found a note next to the drawing, instructing me to enter the cathedral and search for lion claw marks. Olaf explained the legend to me as we entered the castle. I followed the instructions, descending into a cellar, and using my torch to locate the marks. Placing my hand and fingers into the grooves, a door opened before me. As I approached the door, I passed through a haze, reminiscent of suspended water. With determination, I pushed the door open, only to be confronted by a man facing me. A young Dermot. Before I could fully comprehend the situation, another person reached out and pulled me into the room. It was Andrew. The door slammed shut behind me, and I found myself seated in a machine identical to the one in my bunker, handcuffed to it to prevent my escape. Dermot, in his distinctive Irish accent, immediately warned me not to divulge any specific information that could jeopardize the future. This request puzzled me, but as my mind began to piece together the puzzle, I understood why my old neighbor had become young again. Andrew attached wires to my hand, causing me to feel uneasy. They wanted to ascertain whether I aligned with the Allies or the aggressors. Seeking clarification, I inquired if I stood for a free world or if I sided with those who sought to steal technology and dominate with an iron fist. I assured them that I stood for a free world. While they believed me, they needed to hear it directly from me. A polygraph linked to my hand confirmed my sincerity. With that, and a glimpse of a Luger holstered against Andrew's ribs under his lab coat, the wires and handcuffs were removed. We all gathered around a round table, enjoying a cup of coffee, as the two scientists shared their discovery and research. It appeared that a UFO had crash-landed in Perth, Western Australia, leading the military to establish an airbase around the site. Due to radiation levels, the craft had never been moved. Brave military personnel had entered the craft and retrieved only one object: the glowing orb. This basketball-sized sphere was now mounted on top of their machine. Two other orbs had been present in the ship, but one had been stolen. According to documents, a German officer known as Karl, a World War I hero with a deep scar on his left cheek, had come ashore near Margaret River and made his way to the airbase, taking one of the orbs and a hostage. Additionally, there had been an unsuccessful attempt by Japanese paratroopers to seize the third orb. Our sources indicated the existence of an identical lab beneath the Tokyo Tower, with a matching machine awaiting the installation of the third orb. A fierce battle had taken place to regain control of the German lab, resulting in numerous casualties. Thanks to top-secret measures, the Allies had managed to conceal its location, eliminating any aggressors who possessed knowledge of it. The UFO incident had inadvertently sparked World War II, as the remaining aggressors sought to obtain the orbs and expand their power. The lab was experiencing a state of temporal flux due to the orb and the machine Dermot and Andrew had designed. It provided a unique opportunity for the men to live normal lives outside of the lab, while still maintaining control over time. I informed them that I had information regarding the location of the Perth lab and the whereabouts of the UFO. Andrew became apprehensive and reached for his gun, but I assured him that the item I pulled from my pocket was not a weapon. It was a letter from my source, revealing that a Japanese construction team, led by Mr. Tren, had removed a large object from the construction site at the Perth airport. The scientists agreed that time was of the essence. They showed me a switch on the wall and explained that I needed to activate it in my own lab in order to synchronize the three labs. This synchronization would grant the Allies control over the entire Perth, Braunschweig, Tokyo triangle, ultimately giving them power over the world. Just as we were discussing this, a ticker tape machine suddenly came to life. It seemed that the Tokyo lab had come online. They requested my assistance in traveling to Tokyo to prevent the establishment of the new lab. I expressed concern about the potential dangers involved, particularly considering the past fatalities associated with the machines. However, they assured me that the issues had been resolved and provided me with a special lab coat lined with anti-radiation material for protection. They hurried me into the machine, and Andrew handed me his Luger, instructing me to do whatever was necessary. While they couldn't guarantee complete control over the timeline, they assured me that they could transport me to the correct destination as long as the new machine was fully operational. After a brief training session and a series of switches and buttons, I found myself spinning through a mesmerizing array of lights and colors. Suddenly, I arrived at my destination. I heard someone say, "We've got a live one," and two guards forcefully pulled me out of the machine. A female voice urged them to be gentle, as they were unsure if I was a friend or foe. They confiscated my gun and lab coat before escorting me to an interrogation room. The woman introduced herself as Karen, the head of aeronautical research at NASA Florida. Although they did not disclose the exact date, it became apparent from the computing equipment that it was sometime in the 1960s. Karen and I engaged in a brief conversation, during which we both felt comfortable enough to share some of our knowledge. She informed me that a NASA team had discovered glowing rocks during an exploration in Bermuda, which became even more radiant after an electrical storm. These rocks were brought back to NASA, where they were encased in metal spheres and extensively studied. However, some of the spheres mysteriously disappeared, leading to the conclusion that they had been lost in time. Karen then escorted me back to the machine I had arrived in, which closely resembled the others I had encountered. She explained that NASA had developed these machines using the mysterious spheres, and I was the first person to survive a trip. Unfortunately, my arrival had caused a major malfunction, leaving the machine at Edwards Air Force Base as the only other operational one. Karen contacted Peter, the regional manager at Langley Research Center, to arrange transportation for me. However, due to budget constraints and bureaucratic hurdles, NASA faced difficulties. Thankfully, Peter was able to call in a favor from some influential friends, ultimately securing my transport. While waiting in the rocket garden, I heard a rumbling sound growing louder. I looked around, expecting to see a rocket taking off. Instead, the Easy Riders motorcycle gang appeared, riding on loud and unconventional motorcycles, some with unusually long handlebars. Gavin and Apple seemed to be the leaders of the gang, all of whom wore leather jackets. Russ, who rode a classic Harley, was assigned to be my guardian and lent me a bright red 52-150 Turismo to ride. We embarked on a remarkable journey along a popular route in the southern United States. However, our peaceful ride was interrupted when a black 58 Plymouth Belvedere Fury appeared on the horizon, and bullets began to ricochet around us. We split up, and I rode north with Roscoe, but the car continued to pursue us. Fortunately, our superior bikes allowed us to stay ahead, although we occasionally dodged bullets. Roscoe positioned himself between me and the car, but unfortunately, he was shot in the shoulder and crashed his bike. Realizing that I was running out of road, with the Grand Canyon looming ahead, I contemplated a daring maneuver to avoid being shot. However, at the last moment, the back of the Belvedere burst into flames. The car continued to hurtle towards me at 100 miles per hour, but I managed to give the Turismo a burst of power, causing the bike to spin and throw both me and it against the rock wall, narrowly avoiding a collision. The flaming Fury passed me, careening off the dead end and hurtling towards the abyss. The fuel tank exploded upon impact with the canyon wall, reducing the wreckage to countless pieces. As my ears rang from the explosion, I could hear the sound of motorcycles approaching. Gavin and Apple arrived, each wielding a large shotgun that they had acquired somewhere. They had used these weapons to disable the back of the car. Eventually, we regrouped in Flagstaff, where Gavin made a phone call to the Easy Rider base, informing them that we would all meet in Vegas the following day. The person on the other end of the line informed him that Roscoe had survived and was currently in a local hospital. As the afternoon turned into evening, we continued our journey westward. The air was crisp, and the sunset painted a beautiful scene as we rode over Hoover Dam. Upon passing the iconic welcome sign of Las Vegas, a van abruptly cut in front of a limousine and screeched to a halt. The limo driver appeared terrified, and we noticed guns inside the van. Acting on instinct, Apple grabbed her shotgun and fired pellets at the side of the vehicle. The passenger in the van raised a gun, but I managed to shoot it out of his hand with my Luger. The driver then spun the wheels and they fled in a cloud of tire smoke. The grateful limo driver stepped out and thanked us. As he reached for the back door handle, he opened it to check on the passenger, revealing a young and handsome Elvis Presley. Elvis expressed his gratitude and asked if there was anything he could do to repay us. We were treated to a magnificent stay at the 5-star International Hotel, where each of us had a luxurious penthouse suite. The restaurant served a meal fit for royalty, and the Elvis show was nothing short of spectacular. The next morning, with aching heads, we made our way to the airport. Our plane, adorned with a lightning bolt and TCB on the tail, awaited us. We settled into our plush green seats, fastening our gold-plated seat belts, while Elvis sat at his desk in his office chair, taking care of business. He walked to the cockpit and communicated with Richard Nixon over the radio, receiving permission to land at Edwards Air Force Base. After landing, we bid farewell to Elvis and disembarked from the plane. As I was being escorted away, I noticed Apple lingering with Elvis, finding it difficult to leave his embrace. Eventually, she was ushered away, and I caught a glimpse of Elvis through his aeroplane window, giving the Air Force ground crew his signature salute. After being led through the terminal by armed guards, I was placed in an elevator that seemed to descend for an eternity. Finally, we emerged into a long corridor with windows on either side. In one room, I observed alien children sitting at school desks, with a young human teacher standing at the blackboard. In the next room, alien men were engaged in a struggle to escape their enclosure, throwing a chair at the window as I was hurriedly moved along. The scale of the underground complex was immense, and I found myself panting and perspiring. Occasionally, I caught sight of the number 51 on doors and archways. The last room contained large test tubes filled with a clear green fluid, all housing alien specimens except one of them which was shattered and empty. At the end of the corridor I encountered an identical time machine to the one in Florida. I was placed inside, buttons were pressed, and suddenly a silence. In the pitch-black darkness, I fumbled around, realizing that I was inside some sort of metal box. Suddenly, a hatch opened, and a menacing man with a scarred cheek and a black leather jacket grabbed me by the shirt, brandishing a gun. He spoke only in German. I didn't give away the fact I knew every word. He entered the metal machine from which I had emerged and quickly returned with an orb. He forced me into an army jeep, and we broke through an army checkpoint, bullets pinging and sparking around us. I received a pistol whip to the head and woke up at sunrise on a beach, still seated in the vehicle. In the distance, I could just make out a periscope disappearing into the ocean. I was disoriented and in pain as I heard the sound of a plane and saw what appeared to be parachutes floating down. Soon, I found myself surrounded by a group of Japanese men all dressed in black cloaks. They forcefully turned the jeep around and headed toward the sun. My hands were bound and a cloth was placed over my mouth, making the cold air even more uncomfortable. After what felt like an eternity, we arrived at an airbase that seemed familiar. The Japanese soldier in charge instructed me to retrieve an orb from a spacecraft. With a gun pointed at me, I complied and handed over one of the remaining orbs. He then forced me inside the spacecraft and threw in some sort of EMP device before retreating. The resulting explosion left me temporarily deafened. As my hearing slowly returned, I could make out the voices of two men. When my vision cleared, I saw them standing in a field, looking at me through the open hatch of a vehicle. It was a beautiful sunny day, and one of the men remarked that I needed to be cleaned up and fed. They kindly took care of me, providing me with a comfortable bed where I slept soundly. The next day, they showed me their impressive flying machines, including the flying saucer I had previously been inside. They had discovered 3 orbs with special powers and had incorporated them into their machines. They demonstrated the saucer's ability to lift off the ground using air pressure and an anti-gravity force they were still trying to understand. I entertained them with fictional stories about time travel, which fascinated them as they believed it was possible. When it was my turn to fly the saucer, a storm approached. Despite their suggestion to wait, I insisted on trying it out. Unfortunately, the lightning caused the saucer to crash into the ground, and I quickly distanced myself from the wreckage. Navigating by the stars, I managed to find my way to Thornlie, where I encountered a man who agreed to take me home. Upon arriving at my house, I knocked on the door and was greeted by Dermot, who did not recognize me at first. However, after providing him with enough information, he let me inside. He agreed to help me get to Tokyo and directed me to a time machine. Before I left, he mentioned a skilled driver named John who could assist me in reaching the Tokyo Tower. I entered the time machine, and suddenly I found myself in the backseat of a car drifting towards the edge of a Tokyo skyscraper. The driver introduced himself as John and his girlfriend Kirsten. They informed me that they had received a message through their radio network, similar to the radio in my bunker, about my desire to reach the Tokyo Tower. As we drove, I witnessed his impressive driving skills and the capabilities of the time-traveling orb. We encountered gunfire, but skillfully maneuvered through the chaos by doing a time skip here and there. Eventually, we reached a crowd of people preparing for a race. Kirsten communicated with someone in Japanese, and soon everyone was ready to help us. We made our way to a luxury sea cruiser, where we obtained the necessary equipment for our mission. As we approached the tower, Jan warned me to hold on and wished me luck. I was then launched into the air and hung from a girder, witnessing the chaos below. Suddenly, a large relay door opened, and a group of black cars emerged, engaging in a battle with Jan and his allies. I recognized the Japanese paratrooper who had captured me and forced me to retrieve the orb, and I followed him to a laboratory with a time machine. In a moment of desperation, I managed to push him into the machine and set the coordinates for Germany. As I made my escape, I injured my ankle but continued on. Back in my bunker, I contacted Jan and learned that the mission was successful. However, I realized that the timeline had been altered and I would need to fix the consequences of my actions. I spent some time enjoying the view and being debriefed by Dermot and Andrew. Finally, it was time for me to return home. As I entered the house, I couldn't help but feel unsure of what to do next. The excitement of my previous experiences seemed impossible to top. I sat down at the radio, listening to programs from different time periods, and stumbled upon the results of a future lottery draw. A thought crossed my mind: